I want to begin with something I have said many times, and which I believe deserves to be said again tonight, because it is the foundation on which everything else I will share with you rests, and without this foundation, the most precise technique in the world will produce nothing. Imagination is not a faculty you have, it is what you are. Not the part of you that daydreams when attention wanders, not a useful mental tool for creative work or entertainment, the very substance of your being, the creative activity that is occurring at every moment of your existence, whether you are sleeping or waking, you are thinking of great things or ordinary ones, whether you believe in this teaching or dismiss it entirely. It is occurring now. It has always occurred, with or without your consent, and with or without your awareness. The question I want to address tonight is very simple. Are you using this power deliberately or by accident? Because one way or another, you are using it, and the world you are living in, with all its particular circumstances, its characteristic textures, its recurring patterns of experience, is the accumulated harvest of how you have been using it. Not punishment, not luck. Natural, inevitable, impersonal expression of what your imagination has consistently held to be true. Let me say something that will, if you allow it to settle rather than reflexively resist it, change the fundamental relationship you have with your circumstances. The world you perceive is not the cause of your experience. It is the effect of your consciousness. In all of it, the relationships, the money, the health, the recurring situations, the people who keep playing the same roles in your life, is the outpicturing of assumptions that have been held in imagination, often unconsciously, often for a very long time. This sounds the first time you hear it, either like liberation or like an accusation. I understand both responses. It is liberation. You have immediately grasped the corollary. If the world is effect, then changing the cause changes the effect, if it is an accusation. I've momentarily heard it as blame for the difficulties you have experienced. That is not what I mean, and it is important to understand why. You did not choose most of your deep assumptions deliberately. You absorbed them from the people who raised you, from the culture that surrounded you, from the accumulated experiences that the mind organized into conclusions about what is real and what is possible for someone like you. These assumptions became the operating program of your inner life long before you had any concept of this teaching, long before you could have chosen them with awareness. The circumstances they produced are not evidence of your failure. They are evidence of the law, the impersonal, faithful, precise law by which imagination always produces its corresponding outer form. Understanding this law does not assign blame, it assigns power. The power to choose, from this moment forward, what your imagination will hold. The power to revise the inner cause, and thereby revise the outer effect. Not all at once, not through a single dramatic act of will, but through the persistent, patient, intelligent use of the one faculty that actually creates your experience. That faculty is your imagination. And tonight, I want to show you how to use it precisely. The technique is simple in statement and demanding in execution. And I want to be honest about both qualities. The statement is this: define what you desire. Construct the scene that implies its fulfillment. Enter that scene fully. Feel it as already real, and persist in that assumption until it takes form in the world. Demand is in the words enter and feel and persist, because each of these requires something specific that is easy to approximate and difficult to actually do. Let me begin with what most people do wrong, because naming the error precisely is the most direct path to the correction. Most people, when they attempt to work with imagination toward a desire, look at the desire from the outside. They picture it as an object, or a scene placed before them, the new house seen from the street, the body seen in a mirror, the bank account figure seen on a screen. They are the observer, and the desire is the observed. And this position, however vivid, the imagery is the position of someone who does not yet have the thing. Observer is always separate from what they are observing, and separateness from the desire is the exact state that produces continued separateness from the desire. Correction is total. You must not observe the scene, you must inhabit it. What does this mean precisely? It means the perspective of your imagination shifts from outside looking at to inside looking out. The scene is no longer something displayed before you. It is the world surrounding you. The way your actual present surroundings are around you right now. You are not watching yourself in the new home. You are in the new home, noticing the quality of afternoon light through a particular window, hearing a sound from somewhere else in the house, moving through a room that is simply, remarkably yours. This shift from observer to inhabitant is not merely a stylistic adjustment in how you visualize. It's the entire difference between an imaginal act that impresses the subconscious and one that does not. The subconscious does not create from what you look at. It creates from what you inhabit, from the inner experience you accept as your actual present state. Neville was direct about this, and I will be equally direct. Imagery is the vehicle, the feeling is the power. A vivid mental picture without genuine feeling is a drawing. It represents the desire, but does not impress it. What you need is not the representation of the wish fulfilled, but the experience of it. An experience is always felt. It is always a bodily, emotional, whole person event, rather than a purely visual one. What feeling are you after? Not excitement, not the elevated emotion of achieving something difficult after great effort. The state you are seeking is quieter and deeper than that. It is the feeling of course, the way something feels, when it is simply your life not arrived at, achieved, not special in any way that draws attention to itself, but simply the natural, ordinary condition of your days. The feeling of someone who woke up this morning in their own bed, in their own home, without once thinking about whether they deserve to be there or how they got there. The feeling of someone for whom financial security is the unremarkable background of their life, rather than a goal they are reaching toward. This is why I suggest the scene be an ordinary one, rather than a peak moment. The scene of receiving the promotion, of the dramatic moment when the money arrives. The first kiss, these carry the feeling of something exceptional. Exceptional things, by their nature, are not the texture of ordinary life. They stand out, and standing out means the state is still being contrasted with what came before. Find instead the scene that is utterly unremarkable within the life you desire. A Tuesday afternoon, the casual errand, the ordinary conversation that could only happen in a world where what you desire is simply already. Sustainedly true, enter that moment. Inhabit it. Feel what it feels like to be someone for whom this is simply how things are. When the feeling is genuine, when the body has begun to respond to the scene as though it is present, rather than imagined, you have done the essential thing. You've made a genuine impression on the subconscious creative mind, and the subconscious, which does not evaluate whether an impression corresponds to current physical fact, but only creates from what it has received, will begin its work. Let me offer a way of understanding what happens in this process that I find clarifying. Every assumption you currently carry about what is possible for you, every habitual expectation about how the world treats you, every deeply held conviction about your own nature, all of these are, at root, memories. They are the crystallized residue of past experience, organized by the mind into conclusions that it then projects forward as the probable shape of the future. You expect the pattern to repeat because it has repeated. You assume the limitation because you have encountered the limitation. You believe the ceiling exists because you have hit it before. This is the genuine mechanism of most people's creative imprisonment. Not fate, not cosmic assignment, the accumulation of memories that have calcified into assumptions. Assumptions that then produce circumstances, and circumstances that then confirm the assumptions. The loop is closed. It feels like reality because it is self-consuming. A vivid, felt, genuinely inhabited imaginal act does is introduce a new memory. The subconscious cannot distinguish at the functional level between a physical experience and an imaginal one of equivalent vividness and feeling. This is not a metaphor or a spiritual claim. It is the observable fact of how the deeper creative mind operates. When you have entered a scene with full sensory inhabitation and genuine feeling, the subconscious receives it as experience. It becomes part of the memory from which the subconscious creates, a memory of living in the desired reality, a memory of being someone for whom the desire is simply normal life. And from that new memory, it begins to construct the corresponding circumstances in the invisible realm first, in the bridge of incidents that will eventually surface as changed outer conditions. A gradual rearrangement of the world toward the new assumption rather than the old one. This is why precision in the scene matters. A vague impression produces a vague memory. A specific sensory inhabited scene produces a specific memory. And the more specific the memory, the more precisely the subconscious can work from it. I want to speak honestly about what comes after the imaginal act, because this is where most sincere practitioners encounter their most significant difficulty. After you have inhabited the scene, felt the feeling, made the impression, the outer world does not immediately change. Tomorrow morning you will wake up in the same circumstances. The bank account will read the same number. The body will feel the same way. The situation will appear unchanged. This moment, the morning after, the week after, and the month after, which the physical world continues to reflect the old assumption, while the inner work has already moved to the new one, is the precise test that separates those who manifest from those who do not. Natural response to unchanged circumstances is to consult them as evidence. Nothing happened. It is not working. Perhaps I did something wrong. Perhaps this desire is not meant for me. This response is understandable. It is also, if yielded to, the act of returning the creative power to the old assumption and ensuring that the old circumstances continue. Neville put it simply and uncompromisingly. Do not judge by appearances. The physical world shows you where you have been in consciousness, not where you are now. The outer world is always downstream, is always expressing what was true in imagination, before not what is true right now, certainly not what will be true when the new assumption has had sufficient time to work through the invisible processes of creation and emerge as physical circumstance. A task during the interval between the inner shift and the outer confirmation is to maintain the assumption, not anxiously, not by forcing yourself to feel something you do not feel, by returning with whatever ease you can bring to it, to the inhabited scene, by continuing to live in imagination as the person for whom the desire is already real, refusing to allow the present physical testimony, which is only the residue of past, assuming to displace the new assumption that is now operative. This persistence is not the white-knuckled holding on of someone who is afraid. It is the easy, intelligent, and well-grounded confidence of someone who understands the mechanism and knows that what has been genuinely planted in consciousness will produce its harvest. A farmer does not dig up the seed each morning to check whether it has taken root. The farmer plants, waters, and trusts, not in hope, but in law. And plant the assumption. You water it with returning to it, with daily residence in the feeling of its truth, and you trust not, because the outcome is uncertain, and hope is the best you can manage. Because you understand how the law operates, and you know that the law cannot fail. A question arises reliably at this point, and it deserves a direct answer. Imagination is the cause, and the world is the effect. Must you do nothing in the physical world? Must you simply sit and imagine while waiting for circumstances to rearrange themselves? But the action that serves this work is fundamentally different in character from the action that most people take. Most action taken toward a desire is taken from the consciousness of not yet having it. It is driven by the gap, by the lack, by the need to make the thing happen. Action taken from the consciousness of lack carries that consciousness into every step, every conversation, every decision. It broadcasts not yet having. A world which reflects what is being broadcast continues to provide the evidence of not yet having. Inspired action is different in its origin. It arises not from the gap, but from the new state, from the assumption of the wish already fulfilled. It feels different. It has a quality of naturalness. Being drawn forward rather than pushing forward, you find yourself moved to do something specific at a specific moment, not because you have calculated that it will produce the result, but because the impulse arises easily and points clearly in a direction that feels right. Follow these impulses. Do not wait for the full logical chain of how they will produce the outcome you desire. That chain is not available to your conscious mind, which sees only a limited arc of what is being orchestrated. Follow the impulse, because it is source leading you along the bridge of incidents that was already under construction when you made the inner change. Notice the difference between this following and forcing. The forced action drains. It produces friction and resistance, and the familiar exhaustion of trying harder. Inspired action energizes. It has the quality of rightness, of being in the correct current, rather than fighting against it. Learn to distinguish these qualities in your experience, and let them guide your engagement with the physical world. There is a misconception I encounter, often enough that it deserves direct attention. People frequently believe that larger desires require more creative power, that a small desire is easier to manifest than a large one. The imaginal act must somehow be proportional to the magnitude of what is desired. This is the logic of the physical world, where larger effects require larger causes. It is not the logic of imagination, in the realm of imagination, which is the realm where creation actually occurs. There is no big and no small. There is only the assumption held or not held, the feeling genuine or not genuine, the impression made or not made. The creative faculty that constructs a new job is the same faculty, and operating by the same law that constructs a parking space. The difference between them exists only in the category of physical effect, not in the nature of the creative act. This matters practically, because it means that the reason larger desires manifest more slowly when they do is almost never that they require more imagination. Is that people bring less genuine assumption to them. They can feel the reality of a parking space easily because they have no long history of doubt about whether parking spaces are available to them. They cannot feel the reality of great financial freedom easily because they have a long history of believing that such things do not happen for people like them, that they would require years of specific effort to produce. The work is not proportional to the desire. The work is always the same work. Genuine assumption, vivid inhabitation, real feeling. The degree of difficulty is determined entirely by what inner resistance you bring to a particular desire by how much the old assumption conflicts with the new one and demands patience and persistence to displace. I want to close with something that transcends techniques, because I believe it is the most important thing I can offer tonight. Is practice. The deliberate use of imagination to shape your experience is not ultimately about the acquisition of things. It is about the recognition of what you actually are. Every time you hold an assumption in imagination and watch it become fact in the world, you are receiving evidence about your own nature. Not evidence that you have mastered a useful technique, evidence that you are the creative power, that the I am you are, the consciousness you are, is the substance from which all experience is made. Recognition, deepened over time through the practice and its results, is what Neville called the awakening. And not the acquisition of a spiritual title or the achievement of an elevated state separate from ordinary life, the dawning experiential, lived understanding that the world you have been treating as the cause is the effect, and the consciousness you have been treating as the observer is the author. When this understanding is not merely intellectual but genuinely known, when you carry it in the body, the way you carry knowledge of your own name, something changes in the quality of your desires themselves. Not that desires disappear, but they are no longer driven by the same urgency. The person who knows they are the creative power does not chase, express. They do not grasp, they allow. Desires become less the desperate reach of someone who feels incomplete without them, and more the natural self-expression of a consciousness that knows its own nature and finds joy in bringing its inner life into outer form. This is the fullness of what this teaching is pointing toward. The technique is real, and its results are real. And I encourage you to use it with confidence. Use it as a path of self-discovery as well as a tool of creation. Let each confirmed assumption deepen your understanding of what you are. Let the practice itself become the ongoing revelation of your own nature, because what you discover through this practice faithfully applied is not merely that you can change your circumstances. It is that you are the consciousness from which all circumstances arise, and that consciousness, your consciousness. This awareness, reading these words, this I am that you are is, at its depth, what all the great traditions have been pointing toward when they use words like infinite and creative and divine. Imagination is not something you have, it is what you are. Use it, deliberately, specifically, persistently, joyfully. Watch your world reveal itself as nothing other than your own wonderful nature, made visible. Good evening. May you rest tonight in the knowledge of what you are, and may you wake tomorrow ready to use it.